Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul and I'll be your host today. Don't forget, you can join us at 8 p.m. every single Monday on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter if you want to watch us live. Also, you can get the recording as a podcast as well on New Zealand Sport Radio. Also, if you want to get in touch with me, at DrivingMaul on Twitter is probably the best way to have a chat, or you can check out the New Zealand Sport Radio Facebook page as well. Stephen Harris, who unfortunately cannot make it this evening, has been doing some good stuff on there with Club Rugby. He got 2 games at the weekend, doing some post-match interviews with Club Rugby up in Auckland, and was also on SENZ with Eamon, who was here the other week with staff talking about Club Rugby as well. So do check that one out. Good evening to Nocturnal Rights, who has joined us in the live chat over there on YouTube. Get any mates tonight, Paul? And the answer is no. Looks like it could be a solo show. There is one possibility who might join us. As he said, hey, I can join, but then he's not seen the return message of the link. So looks like I'll probably be on my own this evening, drinking a Good George IPA in a Good George pint glass. There you go. So yes, that's my tipple of the evening. Not only has Stephen been gallivanting around on different shows, but so have I at the weekend. I was on What's the Score, which is an Irish radio show talking about the All Blacks, and I will be also recording another show for the Harping on Rugby podcast as well. So look out for both of those. Robbie in the live chat over on Facebook says, did you enjoy the Kiwis versus and Tonga? Yes, I did watch that game. It must admit I didn't have the volume on. I also had the ladies game on in the background as well for both the men's and ladies of those Kiwis versus Tonga. 2 good wins for both the Kiwi sides there. And join us on Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. for the standoff show, where both Brad and Richie will go through all of the international action that was there in the league, as well as also talk about the Gone Blank, talk about the State of Origin as well, which is now at 1-1. Well, Nocturnal Rights, you said, is anyone joining me this evening? And yes, there's John. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, guys. Good evening, listeners, all our thousands and thousands of fans.
Now. It's not thousands, it's hundreds of thousands. How dare you? Let's get this right. Around the globe, obviously. So that's where Steve, you can catch Stephen and myself on different shows around the place. On that one, Nocturnal Right says, "Hurrah, John!" There we go. See, you're famous in your own lifetime in that one. Simon's bringing us up to speed and a whole bunch of other stuff that's been going on around the place. And yes, we will be mainly looking forward to the international games that are coming up. But boy, oh boy, there's already been some action already. Obviously, the All Blacks saw off England and then went on to see off Spain as well. The Namibia played the Blue Bulls and lost that one 12-47. That was a bit of a warm-up game because Emerging Italy is who they sorry, not Emerging Italy. They played Italy A after that, losing 21-43. So good to see Namibia getting some games. Not so good for them on the results, mind you. Also we've had Japan playing 2 test series against Uruguay, winning that one 2-0 with 2 very good wins for them. Also, the Netherlands losing to Zimbabwe 7-30. So Zimbabwe getting a game in, and Portugal going close against Italy. A bit of a surprise there, 31-38, closer than I would have thought it would be, but it's a good result there for Portugal. But John, it's good to see these tier 2 nations getting some games in ahead of the. One other one before I ask you that. Chile lost to Scotland A 5 to 45. So, but it's good to see these tier 2 countries getting games in. Stephen, sorry, John. Oh, dear me.
Stephen must be a very good-looking fella.
I just an autopilot.
Yeah, because if without games, how do they improve? This is
Absolutely.
the thing. Unless they get a shot at playing test matches, you can't expect improvement from these countries. It's a requirement if you want to grow the game.
It is. It's difficult to a certain degree because, as well as these teams aren't fully professional, so for them to take off a month to go tour can be difficult sometimes. So putting these one-off games and taking the games to them also. So Italy went to Namibia to play. I think it was, or was it in South Africa? But anyway, they flew. So Italy played. Italy played in Portugal. Italy A played in South Africa actually. So the Namibia game was in Cape Town, but still, I think a lot of their players would be based in South Africa. So it's good to see those games go to the countries because, I say, taking time off to travel as well as train is harder for them to do so. John, we've not sort of talked to you in a while, I guess a couple of things we should probably catch up with you on. What did you think of Super Rugby? Because I don't think we've talked to you for most of Super Rugby Pacific, and particularly how well the Crusaders saw off the semi-final and final to take the title again.
Well, Super Rugby, this iteration confirmed something for me that I've thought for a long time, which is that Super Rugby itself, over the last 26 years, 27 seasons, I think it's been going, is a competition, an intensely hard-fought competition, where a group of teams from a number of different countries take each other on some home game, some away, and fight furiously to come up with a team to make it to the final where they're going to lose to the Crusaders. And that's what Super Rugby is, right? There might be an odd year where they might lose the final. There might be a few years they were in the late noughts, early teens, where they still made the playoffs every year, but that wasn't acceptable, and everybody got so upset because Todd Blackadder wasn't supposedly good enough. But still, they were competitive every year. But generally, the Crusaders are just light years ahead of every other franchise, and they continually produce players that bring them up to a level which is extraordinary, you know. And the basis of their success is their forward pack, and they understand that no matter how flash the back line may be, if you want to win rugby games consistently, you need a 5-5 and a forward pack that are dominant and moving forward. And they've got systems in place, obviously, a team ethos, almost a family ethos, that was duplicated for a period by the Blue Bulls and at the height of their success with Heineke Meyer. But overall, long term, the Crusaders are just an exemplary franchise.
Yep. So, is it a feedback loop with the All Blacks in the professional era for the Crusaders? No, I don't think it is a feedback loop with the All Blacks. I think it's about putting your pathways in place so that you bring players through. So when they arrive at the environment, they're ready to play, which we've seen this year with about 14 new players, I think it is, into the Crusaders squad. And it's also been about developing coaches through that same and similar pathway. If you look at, Razor came through Canterbury. They've got academies in Canterbury and Tasman, and the vast majority of the players that they take on come through those two provinces. So a lot of the players know each other, have played with each other through age grades or through at least the semi-professional stages before reaching the Crusaders. So it's not like players who arrive. There's the odd player like Sever Reese who has come from other places, but on the whole,
George Bridge.
But on the whole, most players come through Canterbury and Tasman, know the players around them, and it all kind of and therefore the sprinkling on top that Razor or whoever the head coach has to do to get that extra. If they add 5%, but if the Blues or the Crusade or the Chiefs add 5%, they're still going to be behind them because they have because the level they start at because of that background is so strong.
Well, for me, if you're a young rugby player in New Zealand and you want to make the All Blacks, you should do everything in your power to try and get a contract with the Crusaders. And I don't mean that because of preferential selection. I mean, that is the best environment to go to in order to grow as a rugby player. And without doubt, players that are supposedly not good enough in other franchises go to Christchurch and wind up just shining and excelling, especially among the forwards. Forwards are really where I think sometimes where the Crusader selections to the All Blacks might be found short is in the back line, because they will play 9 out of 10 games in a year. 90% of the times they play as a back line, they will be on the front foot, because the Crusaders forwards will 90% of the time be dominating the opposition. And at test match level, that doesn't happen 9 out of 10 times for the All Blacks, and they don't have that. In fact, it probably is even like 95% of the time with the Crusaders. So when the certain teams front up to the All Black pack, have them at least hold them, or maybe have a slight dominance, and now suddenly the ball is on the back foot, and not because I'm not implying that they're not good players, they've just got no experience playing in that position and playing with that sort of pressure in their faces as the backline plays for the Crusaders. But otherwise, if you're a forward, there's no other first choice to grow and develop as a rugby player. As much as it pains me to say it.
I would say actually that you don't want to be moving at that point, because the chances of you making the Crusaders and not being in their catchment area is pretty low. So you want to be going to either Christchurch Boys High or Nelson Boys High School, because then that will get you in the pathways to be in the
whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
If you're leaving it if you're trying to move from another province to the Crusaders, as I say, it's few and far between. The majority of their players come through those two provinces. So if you're a young player, that's how you get there.
Look, for instance, just as an example, George Bridge, not considered good enough for the Blues, becomes an All Black. Look at Bryn Hall, considered sort of pedestrian at Super Rugby level. And I was so impressed with his service and his play in the final. And he has just come on leaps and bounds at the Crusaders. Just two simple examples.
No, George Bridge was Canterbury and in the Crusaders. Didn't.
No, but originally he's from Northland.
Yeah, but he went into Canterbury piece. I'm trying to see which school he went to, but I can't. It's not on Wikipedia, unfortunately.
You'll have Steve very upset.
I will do. You're quite right.
The Bridge boys will. The Bridge boys are all from. I don't know if it's Whangarei, but they're definitely from Northland.
So there's that P. Triple T is Triple T is, let's be honest, he is someone who's moved after being kind of later. That's why I was saying you want to move during your development years if you can.
The earlier the better, and the pathways there are outstanding. They just are outstanding.
I'll not turn right to squeeze. He says Bridge of the Palmerston North boy. Okay, well we'll see. I'll be honest. I don't know his background. The born in Gisborne, so it would be Palmy. He would have come through, probably. The
Scott Barrett is not from Christchurch.
Oh no, Scott Barrett is obviously a Taranaki boy. Went down for university, I think, and Goodhue is the player that actually you're thinking about. Goodhue,
I'm so sorry.
Not
my bad.
Yes,
my bad. I had a blonde moment. Jack Goodhue, not George Bridge. My bad.
And John does try to tell us that his grey silver hair is blonde. It's not true, but there we go.
This is sunshine. This color is called sunshine and divorce.
Oh dearie me. So yes, that's the that's as you say, Super Rugby again boiled down to what we thought, or what it has been for so many years. Looking forward then to some of the rugby that's coming up over the next week, and there's a lot of it, so we won't be able to cover it all. First up on Wednesday night, we've got the Maori All Blacks versus Ireland, and then at the weekend you've got Romania, Italy, United States, the French Barbarians, Japan, France, New Zealand, Ireland, Australia, England, South Africa, Wales, a Currie Cup 15 versus Italy A, Canada versus Belgium, Argentina versus Scotland, and Georgia versus an Argentina 15. Whew. That's a lot of rugby to take in, folks. We won't be able to get through all of that, obviously. But as I've got you on, John, your thoughts ahead of the South Africa series against Wales? Are you looking forward to that? Do you think it'll be competitive? What are you looking for from that?
I think it's very. We've been very blessed here in New Zealand. We've gone through some tough lockdowns, especially the people of Auckland, who have experienced a very different last 3 years to the rest of us. But it's very easy for us to forget how tough things have been in other parts of the world. And the Springboks, who are world champions and ranked number 1 in the world, will on Saturday play their first game in South Africa after winning the World Cup. They will play their first game at home for 3 years. If you think about that, the All Blacks.
No. They played at home against the British Irish Lions. Remember, so first game against the full crowd, maybe, but not.
Sorry. The first game with the stands full in 3 years, right? So they haven't had a stadium of fans able to cheer on their champions for 3 years, not since 2019. So, I mean, that's an extraordinary amount of time to not have your home fans to play in front of. So, challenging, very challenging times that the rugby world has gone through. And I think, every test in South Africa is utterly sold out, every home test. And I think it's going to be quite a special event, as much for the celebration of the game as anything else. So yes, I am really looking forward to it, and to see the kind of cohesion and direction that they're going to be taking now, the Springboks, as they line up for the World Cup next year.
Yeah, 5 o'clock kickoff in South Africa, so it should be nicely in some nice sunshine as well. Not under, so good to see an afternoonish kickoff-ish, I say. Unfortunately, in some ways, they have, as Richard Sterling says, who is our Wednesday night. Springboks have the same problem as my Warriors: no home crowd. Yes, that's true. But the Boks up against Wales, who are now ranked 9th in the world, in a bit of a tailspin, a bit of a kind of a mess at the moment, unfortunately, under their coach. So I'll be honest, I'm expecting a fairly one-sided affair for the against Wales. So it'll be a bit of a carnival celebration, 3-0 victory from as far as I expect for that big home crowd, seeing their world champions for the first time. Unfortunately,
yes. It will be a carnival atmosphere, and there are a lot of players in South Africa that are fighting fiercely to make that World Cup squad for next year. A lot of young players coming through, a lot of older players stalwarts of former teams in the last 3-4 years who know it's their swan song. Certain team members of the bomb squad, for instance, the replacements of the bench. So for a number of players, they're fighting furiously for that place. So it's going to be, I feel a little bit for Wales at the end of a very long season for them. Then again, South Africa is playing the same season, so the South African teams now, their season lines up with Europe. They're all at the end of the long season, and it'll be very interesting. But I think Wales might cop a hammering, especially among the forwards. It might not necessarily be on the scoreline, but physically, I think it could get quite brutal.
Yeah, I'll try to do Wales are the first picks for it. If so, we'll be competitive. Look, I think Wales haven't performed particularly well recently. They've got a couple of injuries, I think, from memory. But yeah, it's going to be a tough one for them. 1 versus 9th in the world, I think gives you a good indication of that one. And as Simon says, he thinks the matches are at altitude, with the first one in Pretoria, followed by Bloemfontein, and the final game in Cape Town. So the final one not at altitude, but kicking off at altitude, which won't help Wales either.
Pretoria is high, Bloemfontein not as high, but Pretoria altitude is high. A very quick field. Superb atmosphere.
Who is going to be the Springboks number 8? Well, we'll see when the side.
Well, it's going to be Jesper Wiese. I'm pretty sure of that. There's been some strange thought that Dwayne Vermeulen had been dropped. It's not that. He's got an injury. I think it is a hamstring or knee. Stand corrected. So he's rehabilitating that. Otherwise, he would definitely be in the squad. But Jesper Wiese was, I think, man of the match for the final, the Premiership final in the UK for England. You know this better than I do. Paul?
Well, yes and no, because you're going to hear when we talk about Australia versus England. I've not been following much English rugby recently at all, and hence there's a lot of names in that England squad that I don't recognise. So it's going to be interesting to see that point of things. Johan Rugby in live reckons that Evan Roos must be the Bok number 8. Yeah, doesn't. We'll see. I don't think so though. As you say, John. Yes, with this, not only doing it in domestic rugby, but look, he's done it in the Springbok jersey as well.
Yeah. Well, Jake White had a famous saying when he was 4 years of coaching the Springbok that one season does not a Springbok make. And so a requote of the old "one swallow does not a summer make," right? One season does not a Springbok make. He made 2 exceptions in the 4 years for that. The 2 players he selected at the end of their first season playing Premier level rugby, Super Rugby. One was Francois Steyn, who is bidding to become the only player next year to win 3 World Cups. And the other one, you might have heard of him, his name's Brian Habana. Those were the only 2 players that he ever selected that had excelled for only one season at the top. So I think Evan Roos's time will come, but I'm pretty sure they're going to start Jesper Wiese, and Roos is in the squad, and he may well play off the bench at least for one of the tests as they bleed him into the system and their playing system.
And look, I mean, if the Boks are up 2-0, we might see some changes that third game as well, with giving a few players an opportunity.
Exactly.
But don't expect mass changes, I wouldn't have thought.
Don't think mass changes. Also remember, the Boks have only got a certain amount of time to put their structures in place for the following year. And the Springboks play a different game to the Stormers. It's not vastly different. It's still, they're both very physical, but it's a far more direct game at the Springbok level, and because they've got a different core across the midfield in Handré Pollard. Help me here. Yeah,
Delendi, and then
you were there, Damien Delendi, right? And of course the captain of the Sharks. Tip of my tongue. Yes. So with those three across the middle, there's a different style of play to the Stormers, and they're much more direct, and with a lot of, especially off the bench in the second half, a lot of impact runners running with them. So yeah, and also what will be very interesting to see is the effect of the return of the former World Rugby Player of the Year at Blindside. So when you've got that dynamic of him coming back, because remember he wasn't around for 1.5 tests against the Lions and the rest of the season with his knee being done. So, once you've got Peter Steph du Toit back, how will they fit him in? What will be the dynamics of the back three and the among the forwards? You have to have Captain Marvel there. Where will they fit Dwayne Vermeulen when he returns? So that'd be quite an interesting dynamic, because Kwagga Smith has been outstanding. He really has been outstanding. He's been in Japan, of course, playing, but the times that he's played, the impact that he's had, it really, especially playing against the All Blacks, his impact as an open side of extreme place was excellent. So how they balance that out is going to be very interesting.
Right, we're going to move on from that now, because that's not the most interesting series of the summer, because of the mid-year, because I think it's a bit lopsided. That game kicks off at 3 a.m. Sunday morning, New Zealand time. Yeah. So that's going to be one that I watch delayed, I think, rather than live.
Yes. I think the most interesting game this weekend is going to be the COVID test.
The COVID
the COVID test in New Zealand. Like, who's going to play? Who's going to coach? It could be like a lucky dip on Saturday. We don't know. Let's see who wakes up and is cleared on their rat test on Saturday morning. It's a lucky packet of licorice, all sorts of selection for Saturday.
Well, I think we've got two cracking series, haven't we? We've got New Zealand Ireland, which is third hosting fourth, and Australia England, sixth hosting fifth in the world. So two series where they're closely matched. I think the New Zealand Ireland one, as you say, is going to be the big one, because Simon Hughes has pointed out that Argentina Scotland might be the most competitive of them all at seventh, visiting eighth. But anyway, we're going to steer clear of that one, and talk more about the ones that I actually know something about. Put bluntly,
that's never stopped a man talking before.
So New Zealand Ireland. Ireland have won 3 out of the last 5 games against New Zealand, which is a record that very few sides have ever had against the All Blacks. They have never won, though, in New Zealand, which is South Africa have also held us in the record, but I say very few sides. They're arriving here in New Zealand with the opportunity for them to win their first ever game, never mind series, on New Zealand soil. So this is as I said on a show I recorded for an Irish radio show. To me, this is probably the biggest series to come to New Zealand, except the All Blacks. Except for the British Irish Lions, for over a decade. You've got to remember now that the Springboks don't really tour to New Zealand, because we know that is the main rivalry for the All Blacks. But this is going to be the biggest tour since excluding the Lions for a very long time to these shores. I think it's great that they've added in a couple of midweek games against the Maori All Blacks as well. Which gives it a bit more of a John makes it a bit more of a makes it feel a bit more like a tour as well, doesn't it? And we've just lost John as he's either unplugged from his computer.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. That's better.
Don't know what happened there. Certainly, it's a tremendous opportunity to blood players via either the Maori All Blacks for New Zealand's playing depth and for Ireland to be able to bring a larger squad and be able to expose some players to the rigors of very high. I mean, the Maori All Blacks are as good a team as probably the top maybe 6 or 7 international teams. Just depends on how much time they have together to gel. But certainly on a talent basis, the extraordinary depth of talent in New Zealand means that the Maori All Blacks are certainly talent-wise as good as anything from 6 or 7 down in world rankings. So a great opportunity to grow depth in both squads and create that sense of, as you mentioned, that sense.
Okay, and looks like we've lost John's his cable into his computer is not working again. Johan asks who's coaching the Maori All Blacks. It's the same coach they've had for a number of years now, which is Clayton McMillan, who is also the head coach of the Chiefs. He'll be helped by Roger Randall, and I've forgotten who the other assistant coach is on that one there. Looking at the side with Ash Dixon having headed overseas, there's a change of captaincy, and he takes a lot of mana with him. So Norris, Eklund, Lomax is your front row. Lomax, I think, was unlucky not to make the All Blacks. Josh Dixon and Isa Walker-Laurie in that engine room. One of those will probably get called up, probably Josh Dixon, to the All Blacks after this game, or after because of the injury to Josh Lord. Your Lucy's, Swafo, Harmon, and Grace. Colin Grace, another player that a lot of people talk about, potentially should have been in the All Blacks. Webber, Joshuani, they're in that Chiefs combo 9-10. Pohipi and Billy Proctor, that is, in the centres with Conor Garden Bashir. I think we see more at fullback than wing, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes on the left wing there. Stevenson and Zahn Sullivan at fullback. Interestingly enough, TJ Perinara is co-captain on the bench, with Brad Webber being the other captain, and also another interesting one, seeing Balin Sullivan. So Zahn Sullivan and Balin Sullivan, brothers, but have never played together at provincial level or above. So it'd be the first time those two playing together, or possibly playing together, depending on how the substitutions go there as well. So look, I think it's a nice mix of experience and young guns, particularly off the bench with Ruben Love, another player able to come on there. Yeah, look, I'm liking the balance of this, but I guess the point you made there was that the Maori All Blacks do not get basically much, if any, preparation time. They also spend time talking about culture and looking at their Maori culture. Particularly, some of the boys haven't necessarily been brought up in a Maori cultural what's the word I'm looking for, household. It's a tall ask to pull the team together at such short notice against an island side, but we've not seen how I've gone blank. How Farrell will use this game, what kind of side he'll pick. So look, I think it's totally unpredictable as to who will actually win it, but I think it should be a cracking game with two kind of barbarian-esque sides in the amount of preparation that they've actually had for this game. And my media pass hasn't come through yet, but I'll chase it up tomorrow. Hopefully, I'll be able to get along to that game. Do we have you back, John? No, we don't. I can't hear you at all, I'm afraid. Sorry. You might have to take your headphones off and just go with the microphone. Yeah, we can get you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you back now. Yep.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I think the match result matters, of course, hugely to the Maori All Blacks, and but I think matters less to the the Irish team as opposed to their individual performances and their ability to prepare. And I think it's more about the spectacle of the game than it is the actual result. Remembering that that there's a special relationship that has developed between Ireland and the Maori All Blacks ever since the wonderful gesture when the Maori All Blacks played. Where is it, at Munster, where the coach had died very suddenly with a heart attack, and the tremendous gesture that they made for the coach of Leinster. It was Leinster, right?
No, Munster.
Munster. For Munster's the coach's sons, and the presentation of a Maori All Black jersey to them, and the haka and the honor that they showed, and it just was something so special about the brotherhood of rugby. And so, yeah, I think there's some really special ties were developed at that stage between the Maori All Blacks and Irish rugby itself. So, yeah, I think it's more about a celebration on Wednesday rather than a, chalk one into the record books and we're going to hold this win over. Whereas Saturday is certainly about winning. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, I mean, for Ireland, also the Ireland coaching squad will be concentrating on beating the All Blacks. So how much focus will there have been within the squad about training for the way the Maori All Blacks play, etc., and knowing the opposition. So from that point of view, I think yes, the Ireland team will not be preparing for this game in the same way they'll be preparing for Saturday. So look, I've not seen the Ireland side named yet. Has been also mentioned in the live chat. So look, it should be a cracking game. Apparently, it's on Prime as well as Sky, so it's on free to air. That might be on a delay. I don't know, but it'd be good to get that one, on free to air, so people can actually watch it. So the big one then, the All Blacks versus Ireland. Having looked at some of the sides that have been picked out there and people have put down for their starting 15, and looking at my starting 15, the front row is probably going to be fairly settled or fairly predictable, with Bauer, Takielaho and Lualala probably there. In the engine room, we know it's going to be Brady Retallick and Sam Whitelock, but the first big question mark comes in at in the Lucies. Everyone's expecting Ardie Surveyor to be at 8, Sam Cane obviously the captain at 7, but that number 6 jersey has been a problem jersey ever since Kano left it, really, but definitely at the moment that is a big question mark. Do they go for a carrying number 6 in the Kiriwani? Do they go for sort of a carrying number 8 in that 6 role in the Hoskins Tutu or Gus Peter Sawakula, or do they go for for another 7 in or a 7/6 or 6.5 in Papi Leahy? John, any sort of thoughts as to how you think they'll go with that one?
Well, New Zealand is always better when they have an out-and-out 7, and I think I've said many times on this show that Ardie Surveyor is not a true 7. He's an incredible rugby player and amazingly athletic, but he's not a true 7. Sam Cane is a 7. So from that perspective, and by the way, it's not as if there's a whole lot of 7s running around in New Zealand rugby at the moment, which is really interesting in that this country, New Zealand, was the birthplace of the true open side flanker, and always seemed to have this a secret stock of them. But that makes a huge difference. Always remember that the primary function of a number 7 is not to turn the ball over or even to slow the ball down. That's important, but it's not his primary function. His primary function is to secure your own ball. It is to make sure that no player can attend every ruck, and few players can impact every every second ruck. So somewhere around every 2.1 rucks that take place on your own carry, that your open sider is making sure that he blows away and clears whoever is trying to obstruct the ball. And that Sam Cane is really, really good at. Plus, of course, he's good at turning the ball over. The question, as you say, becomes who is your ball carrier? Because part of the issues that they have had is Kieran Reid was such a good option in the lineouts. That's something that's forgotten, is that when they come up against really good lineout operatives like the Springboks, for instance, who have a number of tall players that they utilize, and not just as jumpers, but they use a lot of their tall players as lifters. And so they might target the, for instance, All Black lineout by using tall players as lifters. So where are the options where they can get a third jumper? And this is the issue, that with Sam Cane, Adi Severe, and Hoskins Satutu, who is going to jump in the lineout? This is the balance that you have to look at. Now, as much as you saw on Saturday how the Crusaders picked apart the Blues lineout and the terrible effect that had on their ability to play. New Zealand rugby is so dependent on quick ball, the whole structure of how New Zealand plays. To me, this is my personal opinion, the number one priority should be the balance of the loose forwards when it comes to playing the ball on the ground. And if you then have to go with your second best option when it comes to the lineouts, well, then so be it, right? But yeah, that's just my particular opinion. We just don't have. I mean, Jerome kind of took the odd lineout ball, but really it was the ability to play him was made possible by how Kieran Reid could soar in the lineout. So how they get that balance right and where they're going to get their options. And remember as well that in these tests, they're highly unlikely to show some of the options that they've got planned for next year's World Cup in dealing with this exact issue, you know?
Yeah, true. But there is, and I'll head down a rabbit hole at this point. There's a lot of pressure on Ian Foster. That's not been helped by some of the comments that have come out from Razor recently. Which was somewhat along the lines of, do I have to win 10 Super Rugby high titles before I can be the All Blacks head coach? It felt like that's what they wanted me to do before when I was being interviewed. Do I being asked would he be up for the Wallabies head coaching role? He was like, well, look, I pinned my sort of heart on the All Blacks one, and I didn't get it. So yeah, I've got to keep my options open and see what comes along. So look, there's a whole bunch of pressure on the current coaching setup, and to lose a game for the first time ever to Ireland would be a massive blow to them. I think they will do, to be honest with you. What's happened this week around COVID has made it also kind of interesting. Because the top three coaches are all out. Brian Moore is now the only coach left standing, as you kind of alluded to at the beginning of the show. And Joe Schmidt has come in to help out. Now, if the All Blacks win this weekend against Ireland, does that actually weaken the position of Ian Foster? Because, hey, look, they win without you, mate. You're actually the thing that's holding them back. It's one of that weird... funny situations, where actually they'd be in some ways might be better off losing. Would Ian Foster would position be strengthened by the All Blacks losing rather than winning because he's not there, kind of thing. I think one of the reasons Razor hasn't been called in is that clearly there's tension between him and Foster. There isn't the same thing with Joe Schmidt, but yeah, does Joe Schmidt get the praise if the All Blacks win rather than Ian Foster this weekend? I think there's a lot of pressure on that side that they can't afford to hide too much in case they do lose, and what situation that leaves Ian Foster in, though. John.
Yeah, I feel for Foster. I really do. I've met the man. He's a genuinely decent man, and you can see that the moment you meet him. This is a genuinely decent dude. And it's very clear that from the word go, the knives were out before he even took his first test. If he had won every game between taking over and now comfortably, then the media would be writing it up as a terrible time in world rugby because there's no real competition for the All Blacks, right? That's how they would be writing it. They wouldn't be giving him any credit. And any time he's done anything good, it's always been the players that have done well, some other secondary coach that's done well, the paucity of the opposition. He gets zero credit, right? So I feel for him. He's on a hiding tonight. It doesn't matter what happens. The knives are out for him. And it's not just among the media, who definitely have an agenda, but it's also among most of the New Zealand rugby public that just don't see any good in him whatsoever. And I feel for the man because he is a genuinely good guy. And he's done some good things with the All Blacks. Does it mean that Razor Roberts wouldn't be better? Yeah, he may well be, but it doesn't. To me, it smacks of an agenda. Just how personal their attacks have been on Foster.
So part of it's. I think some of it's also is not actually sort of personal against him, but I think it's against the old boys network that's seen as that the New Zealand rugby is seen as being. Because let's be honest, look, Ian Hansen got the Hansen got the job after being Ted's assistant. Foster got it after being Hansen's assistant. It seemed like you kind of that's how you come through. It's the old boys network. He never won anything at Super Rugby level or provincial level, which meant that even though he hadn't been head coach for 10 years, people were looking at his record from 10 years before going, well, what's he won? Well, he's won a World Cup as a assistant coach, but not as a head coach.
But also there's a lack of understanding in New Zealand about the primary role of coaches at Super Rugby level. It's different to any other coach. Australia, South Africa when they were still part, Argentina. The primary role for a Super Rugby coach in New Zealand is not to win the Super Rugby. It's to produce All Blacks.
Well, the primary role of Super Rugby is to produce All Blacks, but their role is to...
No, but hear me out. He produced All Blacks for Uncle Ted, for Graham Henry. He produced All Blacks for him, including notoriously difficult All Blacks. So players with some attitude problems like Sione Luaki, he brought them through. Players with injury issues like Sidiveni Sivivatu, he brought them through. So there were a whole bunch of players that he brought through. He did get to a final where his team got soundly thumped by the Bulls. Yes, that's true. But he brought a continuous stream of talent to the All Blacks, and that's why he got the job. Because he produced on his primary goal, which was to produce All Blacks. And he was producing highly skilled All Blacks, including some difficult characters. And that's why he got the job.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's not only is he seen as being part of the old boys club, he's also not charismatic in the media. Whereas, let's be honest, Razor is.
Yes, he's a very charismatic fellow.
Doesn't help as well. Anyway, so it's going to be fun. The number of kind of sideline stories or stuff around this game this weekend is also quite high with that kind of thing going on. Personally, I would go with Papi Leahy. As John says, it's about securing that ball. Whilst I now, after the, I don't think they're saying no scrum, no win applies anymore, but I think it's now no line out, no win does apply. But I still think that Whitelock and Retallick on their own can secure enough ball in that space. Into the halves, then we know it's going to be Smith and Bowden Barrett. The next big question, though, is those centres, which hasn't been helped by Havili and Goodhue both going down with COVID. I also read somewhere now on a tweet now, who up to you as to how much you want to put onto Twitter, but that both Tapia and Rieko Ioane were showing symptoms but not testing positive. So we'll have to see whether those two will make it. And Nocturnal Lights says Smith is under injury crowd. Well, if Smith's under injury crowd, then Christie will start instead.
By the way, what is the status of Anton Leonard-Brown?
Oh, he's out for the year.
For the whole year?
Yeah, he's gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're looking at basically, so personally, I think it'll be Tapia and Rieko Ioane in there. But look, it is those two jerseys, 12 and 13, are up for grabs. I know a lot of people are saying Rieko has got that 13 jersey tied up, but for me, he still needs to pass more to his outside men and be a little bit less selfish on that one. But if those two are also sick, then it does come down to being RTS and Fainga'anuku. Lester Fainga'anuku, who was originally picked as a winger, but two debutants in that centre pairing, that would be a massive ask up against a Bundyaki Henshaw or a Henshaw Ringrose or Bundyaki Ringrose combination. So boy, oh boy, it's starting to look very thin in the centres there, John.
Well, the thing that I keep on thinking to me is when it comes to 13, who has the best pass?
Mm-hmm.
Who has the best pass?
That's why I like to have that's why I like an Anton Leonard-Brown or Josh Goodhue in there. But
yes,
but that's not what that's not what everyone's seeing at the moment. And they're looking at players like, as I say, Rieko Ioane or Lester Fainga'anuku, who's a converted.
Well, what is Rieko Ioane's pass to his outsides like?
Oh, it doesn't exist. So
I mean, I'm not a big Sevu Reece fan, but I certainly am. Caleb Clark's going to play, right?
Well, he's in the squad. I personally wouldn't. I don't think he'll get selected, but he's in the squad.
Who do you think will play?
So the back three, I'm expecting Geordie Barrett to be 15. Will Jordan will be in the 14 jersey. That 11 jersey is up for grabs. I would think it would be Sevu Reece. I think he's got the form and the runs on and the runs on the board, and that Caleb Clark would miss out. But Caleb Clark could get that 11 jersey instead of Reece.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. You know, I don't know Caleb Clark's form well enough, but gee, his talent level is just off the charts.
Yep. Unfortunately for him, he headed off to the Sevens and basically missed last year, so doesn't have the runs on the board as far as the All Blacks are concerned. And then I think he's had a couple of injuries this season that hasn't really had a full season of Super Rugby either to prove himself. But maybe he'll prove himself in the camp. Maybe he will, as you say, he is a superbly talented player. But I say I don't think that 11 jersey is a problem. Whether you put Caleb Clark or Sevu Reece in there, that's fine. It's that 12-13 combination that's going to be the problem there.
And would they, if necessary, move Ioane there?
To 11?
Was he considered to have lost his step?
I don't think he's considered to have lost his step. I think he was a 13 all the way through age grades, and he seasons up to the 13, and he's saying, I want to play 13.
Okay.
The other option is that Geordie Barrett has been a 12 all the way through age grades, and has stated he wants to play 12, has played some 12 there with the Hurricanes. So he could also get put into 12, especially as Aaron says with the COVID situation. If Tapia also goes down, then yeah, there's a good shout for being Geordie at 12. So that back line at the moment, that centre combination in particular, I say, is is a concern. You could have 0 centre or 12-13 jersey international caps in that combination up against an experienced one. As Nocturnal writes, Akira Iwani also wants to play 13. He does, but he has to wear 6 and range out wide.
Well, I liked Aaron's remark about Geordie Barrett moving to 12. If they need to do that with COVID positive testing, who would they play at fullback?
Oh, well, Jordan then switches to fullback, and then you put either Sophie Rees on the right and Caleb Clark on the left, or you can go Lester Fineman on the right. There's those options aren't. That's not a problem. A lot of people actually want Will Jordan at 15. I want him at 14 because having 2 solid guys under the high ball against a kicking Northern Hemisphere side, I think is a good idea. And so having him at 14 in that traditional fullback 14 like Israel Dag, obviously Ben Smith, Corey Jane. It's something that the All Blacks have done for a long time now. So at the moment, I think it's going to be Tapia and Iwani unless they're sick, and as I say, Reece Jordan and Geordie Barrett for me at those in those back 3 positions. The what's the word I am looking for? So that's kind of what I think the All Blacks 15s will look like. I'll put out my predictions for the international games on our Patreon. So keep an eye out for that, folks, over the next couple of days. But yeah, this is massive game this weekend there. Australia versus England then. Also, I'm not saying much about Ireland. Oh, so one thing I should say about Ireland is they've also got COVID in their squad. Mac Hansen has tested positive, so he is out, or probably out for this weekend, as well as injuries to Ian Henderson and Rob Herring. And they're flying another player out, Niall Scannell, for that as well. So, folks, look, it's not just the All Blacks that are having a problem, that are having issues. I think a lot of squads will do over the next couple of weeks for that one. Australia versus England then. This Australian squad's looking pretty settled now, with your players like your Quade Coopers, your Karevis coming back.
Karevi's key.
I think Dave Rennie's got them going in the right direction heading into this England series.
Look, Australia almost always have such smart backs, skilled, fundamentally well-skilled, well-drilled, good option takers, passing left and right off both hands really well. It all comes down to the forwards. In the tight 5. Can they front up in the tight 5? And if they can get parity, they, through sheer smarts, can win test matches. But can their tight 5 stand up to, let's call it now, the other big 1, 2, 3, 4 teams? So the forward packs of France, the England, the All Blacks, and South Africa. And this is where you'll start seeing Dave Rennie wanting to separate the men from the boys. Who can he depend upon in his tight 5? Who can he lean on to take to the World Cup? That's the big thing.
The England, through a combination of injuries and just Eddie Jones' bloody mindedness, have got a whole bunch of names. I've got a bunch of names there that some of them I don't recognise. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how some of those go. He is playing his game of I'll bring players back from the cold as Danny Kerr, Mako, and Billy Vinapola both come back into the squad as well. 2 players who haven't been part of the squad for 12 months. So, look, what England side will turn up? Don't go watching the Six Nations to try and find out, because, as I say, there's a whole bunch of players there that weren't involved in the Six Nations. So, it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. Turner Wright says, will Marcus Smith and Farrell gel? Well, that's a massive question. And how will Farrell cope with Karevi charging down his channel the whole time?
And having to tackle legally.
And having to tackle legally. So lots of question marks. So I'm really looking forward to that game as well. That game will be, I expect, straight after the All Blacks Ireland game. So yes, as you can see, I'm wearing my England jersey already. I've got my England jersey, All Blacks jersey, and Lions jersey all in the background there, folks. So I'm all ready for all of this. What do you call it? Gone blank now. All of this international weekend. We're running out of time, John. I've just realised I forgot to mention the Pacific Nations Cup games this weekend. There's also Australia A versus Samoa and Fiji versus Tonga on top of all of those games. What's going to be the really interesting one from that one, I think, for a lot of us, will be what's the impact now of the 3-year rule where players can change nationality. Tonga, in particular, being the side that has got a lot of players coming into it, such as Falau. I've gone blank. Charles Piatow. The ex-All Black centre as well.
Isa Nathiwa.
No, wasn't thinking about Isa Nathiwa. I was thinking
Charles Piatow, you mentioned already.
But
I know exactly you're talking about. Played for the Highlanders.
Yes.
Malachi Fekitoa.
Fekitoa, yep. So really going to be
too slow. Nocturnal rights, too slow.
It's just gone. So I think how Tonga go with all those players coming back up against Fiji is going to be really, really kind of interesting on that one. I think that's going to me that's the biggest piece that's going to be interesting from these games. Great to see Australia A going out there to make it a round robin thing. There was a suggestion earlier that the Maori All Blacks could have gone, absolutely, but then they wouldn't have been able to play the Ireland games. You can't play Wednesday and then Saturday. My voice is about to give out. I've done too much talking. And Richard Sterling, yes, send me a Warriors jersey. You're quite right. I need a Warriors jersey for this backdrop as well. Thank you, John, for joining me. It's been a long hour. Have a great week, everybody. Do join us, obviously, on the old Twitters during the rugby games. I'll be back on Monday night with the DrivingMaul show. Join Richard and Brad on Wednesday night for the NRL show, where they're talking about that fantastic atmosphere for both the men's and women's Kiwis versus Tonga game, plus Origin, plus Samoa, Fiji, Papua New Guinea were all involved in the Rugby League international games at the weekend. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody.